Thank you. It's great to be with Moms for Liberty. Brianna, thank you for the introduction and telling about my family. And I am here today, ladies and gentlemen, because I believe that Moms for Liberty should have a voice in education and you should not be silenced. And I'll give a shout out to those Arkansans that are here. You're doing a great job. The Fayetteville chapter I know, but other parts of the state. So thank you for your leadership. You know, my wife Susan, who's not here, we've been married for 49 years, and very proud of our children and grandchildren. When I was in the private sector, I explained to my grandson, who was 5 years old at the time, that I had to go to Abu Dhabi. Well, he had a hard time understanding Abu Dhabi over in the Middle East. But I explained it to him, and he goes to his kindergarten class, and he explains to his classmates that Papa was going to have to spend the weekend in Hobby Lobby. But you know, as you raise children, you understand the importance of choice in education. I have 4 children, 3 sons and a daughter, and while they all graduated from public schools, and my wife Susan was a substitute teacher in the public schools, we also helped start a Christian school so that our children had an option when they were younger. And then there was a time when a couple of them had a particular need, and so we homeschooled. And so that really reflects choice in education, does it not? Making decisions for your children that make sense for them. And I practice and I believe in that. We continue to need that today. You know, it's mentioned that I was appointed by President Ronald Reagan as United States Attorney. Very proud of that connection with President Reagan. And I was the youngest in the nation at the time, by the way, age 31. But one of the responsibilities I had was investigating a terrorist group up in northern Arkansas in the hills. They had 280 acres of compound. They were extremely violent. They were armed to the teeth. They were committing murders. One pawn shop owner just simply because they perceived that person was Jewish. And they were treading upon rights and violence. And so I had an arrest warrant for them. We had a search warrant for the property. The FBI, the hostage rescue team was there, surrounded the compound. The leader refused to come out. And the FBI sent for me and said, "We need you to help in the negotiation." So I went up there and I got out of the vehicle, and as I was going to the forward operating negotiating center for the hostage rescue team, they threw me a bulletproof vest and said, "You might need this." And I said, "This is not why I went to law school." After 3 days negotiation, they surrendered without a shot being fired. I prosecuted them in federal court and sent them to prison. And so I know something about what is a terrorist group. I know something about what is a hate group, and let me tell you, Moms for Liberty is not that. Again, your voice is very, very important. I've had some interesting experiences in life, from Congress to DEA to Homeland Security, and probably the highlight, though, with my public career was being governor of Arkansas for 8 years, just finished, term limited this last January. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, I turned the realm of state government over to her. First time in Arkansas history, it went from a Republican administration to a Republican administration. But as governor, as mentioned, I balanced the budget for 8 years, created record surpluses, we lowered taxes, we invested more in education, including teachers and computer science education, and we grew the private sector of the economy more than 100,000 jobs. But you know, I also fought hard to keep the government from pushing a social agenda in our schools. Whenever President Obama, while I was governor, sent a notice to all of the school districts, straight to the superintendents, and said, under federal law and under the Department of Education, you must make sure your bathrooms are open to whatever gender identity a student decides they are that day. I saw that letter, and I announced publicly that our school districts can ignore that guidance from Washington, D.C. wrong legally, usurps local authority, and wrong in common sense as well. Whenever you look at education, we knew the importance of parents being engaged. And so we created a transparency law that I signed into law that said school districts must put their curriculum and what they're teaching the children on a website where there's transparency and parents can know what is being taught. And then we set a very specific process so that parents can then go to the school board and raise objections. And so we made sure that the rights of parents is instilled into the law, and I signed that. It's transparency. I have a daughter who loves sports, and I believe in women's sports. And I love what we've seen over the last 40 years, how women's sports have just taken off. And so I was pleased to sign a law that prohibits biological males from competing in women's sports. You know, I also, of course, supported choice in education as governor, and I mentioned computer science because this is important. When you're engaged in the school systems, we want to give our children every opportunity to make a good living when they finish. And so I set a goal to put computer science into every high school in Arkansas, and we've led the nation in terms of a comprehensive education program for computer science. We went from 1,100 students taking computer science to over 23,000 students taking computer science. That gives them opportunity. And in fact, whenever you look at the computer science programs, we've not only led, but we've set a model for the nation. We've gone from 10% of schools across the nation that offer computer science to 51%. And I'll tell you that as President of the United States, I will have computer science programs in every high school in America. We'll make that 100%. And guess what? We're not going to do it by heavy-handed government mandate. We're going to do it by incentives and by leadership so that we can give our students the best opportunity. And so I'm running for President of the United States. I'm running because if you look at all of the candidates running, you'll see no one with the breadth of experience at the state and federal level that I bring to the table. As a federal prosecutor that addresses crime in the streets, as being in charge of border security, I know what needs to be done on the southern border. Balancing a budget, we actually did it in Congress 20 years ago. We need to do it again, and I've done it as a governor as well. Whenever you look at my experiences heading up the DEA, and as parents, we ought to be concerned about fentanyl in our communities and our schools, the danger it poses to our children. I know what needs to be done. I've led through drug crisis, and as president, I will make sure that we provide leadership to reduce the influence of drugs and harmful products to our children. That is important in our society, and it starts with fentanyl that has caused really the leading cause of death between those 18 and 42 in our society. That's extraordinary. And so we have to do better. Those are some of the reasons that I'm running for president, but it's also to get the heavy hand of the federal government out of the classroom. Values in our society should be shaped by parents and not undermined by the schools that we trust. That's important. Whenever you look at New Jersey, I was stunned to see that New Jersey Attorney General filed suit against school districts because the school districts had a policy of telling parents if their children were asking for changing their gender. And the state sued them because they wanted to have parental engagement and knowledge as to what's happening with their children in the school. Let me tell you, that is wrong. That is pushed by a false agenda. And I believe that God created two genders. And there should be no confusion with children, but if there is confusion with children, that should be addressed by parents and not some pushing of a leftist agenda by the schools. These are important points. And so, what can you expect from a Hutchinson administration? To take the heavy hand of government off the back of our local school district so parents, again, will have their voice heard. I don't want a leftist government telling parents or interfering with how they deal with the most sensitive issues in terms of gender and health care. And I don't want a conservative government doing it either. I want government out. I want parents to decide, and I think that's important. Let me just end by telling a story because I've had a few serious topics today. But as governor, I got to do some fun things too. So I went to the Coca-Cola 600, the NASCAR race in Charlotte, North Carolina. I was asked to be the honorary starter. And I said, I can handle that. But as soon as I got there, I started visiting with people and they said, you're the honorary starter? Be careful, don't drop the flag. And I thought, what's the issue here? So I went and YouTubed it. And I could see what the challenge was. Those cars start 200 yards down the track. By the time they get to the starting pole, they're going 200 miles an hour. There's an updraft that will knock the flag out of your hand. I started getting nervous. Right before the race started, I went to pit row. And I was talking to the race car drivers, and they said, you're the honorary starter, don't drop the flag. Because if you drop the flag, it goes right down the track, and the cars will be going over it. That's not a good thing. So I'm nervous as can be. I climb the pole, I get up there, I grab the flag with both hands, and I start that race, and I want you to know, I didn't drop the flag. Of course, I like symbolism, and symbolism tells me that we've inherited such incredible freedoms from our forefathers who sacrificed a great deal. We're in Philadelphia, the heart of liberty. And our forefathers right here in Valley Forge sacrificed for us our freedoms, and we want to carry that to the next generation and not drop the flag. I'm running for President of the United States. It's Asa 2024. Help me get on the debate stage. Thank you, and God bless you.
Welcome to the stage, Moms for Liberty co-founder, Tiffany Justice.
Morning, everyone. How are you today? We're doing well? What a great start to the morning. Mr. Blackwell, what an honor again to have you here today, sir. I get to introduce Jaimee Michell. So a lot of you know we started this organization with $500, right? In Tina's back bedroom, decided to sell some T-shirts. Yeah, that's right. And yet here we are now with everyone here. And so I got on Twitter. We started a Twitter account. Tina runs Facebook. I run Twitter. We still run Facebook and Twitter because I think the voice is authentic and it's important, although I'm happy to get help sometimes these days. But one of the people that I met on Twitter, I saw this group that started, and it was Gays Against Groomers. And I was so intrigued. I was like, yes. We've come to a point in this country where we treat adults like children, right? Safe spaces, words of violence, all the stuff, right? And then we treat children like adults. Right? And so Gays Against Groomers stands in the gap. They're saying we're adults, we make choices in our lives, but we need to protect children together. And so I'm so honored to have Jaimee Michell here today with us. So I'm going to read her bio, and then we're going to invite her on the stage, and she's going to share a little bit about her organization. Jaimee Michell is a name that has been making waves in the world of activism lately. As the founder and president of the nonprofit Gays Against Groomers, she and her organization have been fighting to end the sexualization, indoctrination, and medicalization of children that is being done in the name of LGBTQIA+++. Prior to Gays Against Groomers, she was best known as her online persona, The Gay Who Strayed, where she accumulated over 250,000 followers. She has also worked in the conservative media and consulting space as a digital media designer for over 4 years. Moms for Liberty welcomes Jaimee Michell.
So much for the warm welcome. I'm honored to be here. So grateful to the ladies of Moms for Liberty for having me, and I'm just so excited. So before I get started, I wanted to share a video that our Gays Against Groomers team put together for Pride Month, which thankfully is now over. We made it. Except, in Canada, our friends to the north, I think it's a whole season now, and I'm so sorry about that. But here, for now, I think it's over. I mean, there's a few, anyways, whatever. We'll get into that another time. But I wanted to share this ad that we put out on the 1st of June to voice our public dissent to what we see happening now in our community and being done in our name. So I'd like to play that now.
There is no pride in indoctrinating children in schools.
There is no pride in stripping parents of their right to protect their children.
There is no pride in sexualizing children at drag shows.
There is no pride in mutilating and sterilizing children in the name of gender-affirming care.
This June, what are you proud of? Because we have some issues that we need to talk about.
We're fighting back from inside the community. Join Gays Against Groomers in the battle against radical gender ideology that is destroying our youth.
Thank you. Powerful, right? Yeah. Thank you. So that ended up going very viral. We actually tried to get it on Hulu and some other streaming platforms. They denied us during Pride Month, which is kind of homophobic and discriminatory, if you ask me. I don't know. That card doesn't work for us. Anyways, I'm going to get into my little short speech here. My name is Jaimee Michell. I am a lesbian woman and the founder and president of Gays Against Groomers. We are a nonprofit of gay people who seek to end the sexualization, indoctrination, sterilization, and mutilation of children happening under the guise of LGBTQIA plus 2Z ABC, I don't know. Gay people are not a monolith. I am here to tell you that not all of us are on board with this new modern rainbow movement we are seeing now. In fact, it is the majority of us who are not. That is why I started this organization. I can no longer sit by and watch this toxic ideology be foisted upon children in our name, in my name. I knew I wasn't alone. There was just no unified front to voice our public dissent to what is being done, so I decided to create one. And now, thank you. And now, in just a little over a year, we have 17 chapters across the United States. We do states, not counties. So, unlike Moms for Liberty, which is great. We have 17 chapters across the United States, over 100 members, and more than 700,000 followers on social media. We've also been banned from 11 platforms in that short time, most notably being PayPal and Venmo, which was crazy. They're clearly terrified of us speaking out from inside the community, and to be completely honest, they should be. They don't know how to handle us because they can't dismiss us as homophobic, transphobic bigots like they do all of you. Although they certainly do try. Our Wikipedia says we're an anti-LGBT hate group, which is, it's very confusing. Protecting and safeguarding youth should not be controversial. It should be something everyone can agree on, but clearly that is not the case anymore. The truth is, we never consented to pornographic filth being given to children in schools. We never consented to woke doctors sterilizing and mutilating children in our name. We never consented to radical trans activists taking over and speaking on our behalf. These people, as well as every major institution in this country, are actively manipulating the public and trying to use the rights that we fought for as an excuse for their grotesque behavior and the lies that they tell. Yet these are the same people who preach about how they promote love and acceptance. We beg to differ. I think you guys do too. So-called gender-affirming care on minors has been banned in countries across Western Europe and has been appropriately labeled the biggest medical scandal since the lobotomy craze. Doctors and scientists in these countries have recognized that gender ideology and the medical practices that go with it are catastrophic for developing children. It is also deeply homophobic at its core, to be quite honest with you. Without medical intervention, more than half of the children who express feelings of gender discomfort would otherwise grow up to simply be gay adults. According to multiple scientific studies, there is no wrong way to be a boy or a girl, and telling them otherwise, telling children otherwise is evil. It's abundantly clear and cannot be denied that medically transitioning children is the new conversion therapy, only 1,000 times worse, because these children are being treated as lab rats. And we at Gays Against Groomers have helped pass over a dozen laws and policies across the nation so far to ban this barbaric practice. We plan on making child sexual mutilation illegal in all 50 states, whether these monsters like it or not. This ideology is toxic, hateful, violates boundaries, and it lies to everyone. It lies to parents, to children, to us. It is not reality. It takes advantage of the most impressionable and vulnerable. Children cannot consent to these interventions. No child can make permanent decisions about anything, let alone becoming sterile and chopping off body parts. And no child is born in the wrong body. Not only is this, thank you. It's true. It's true. Not only is this agenda hurting children, but us as well. The radicals who have hijacked our community are setting us back decades with their assault on children. The acceptance we as gays and lesbians fought for to achieve in this country is now being erased seemingly overnight, and it's devastating for us to watch. Sorry, last page. We are deeply grateful for Moms for Liberty, who are willing to listen and work together. We sincerely believe that the most effective way to end the war on children is by uniting together. Despite whatever differences we may have, we all share the common goal of saving these kids. No matter how many times they try to censor us, the truth will prevail. They can try to shut us up, but we will never keep quiet. We will not make peace with an ideology that seeks to sexualize, indoctrinate, and amputate the healthy body parts of children. We will not let them continue this abuse in our name. We have a mission, and we are not going anywhere. We hit the ground running in our first year, and together we will restore common sense and reality and eradicate the social contagion that is poisoning the minds of our youth. If you would like to learn more about our movement or help us with a charitable donation, please check out gaysagainstgroomers.com for more. And thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Coming and speaking, we appreciate you joining us this morning. Now I have the great pleasure to introduce someone who has become a dear friend. Dr. James Lindsay is an author, political commentator. Dr. James Lindsay has written 8 books spanning a range of subjects, including education, postmodern theory, and critical race theory. James is the founder of New Discourses, an organization dedicated to shining the light of objective truth in subjective darkness. James is also the co-author of Cynical Theories, How Activist Scholarship Made Everything About Race, Gender, and Identity, and Why This Harms Everybody, and is the author of Race Marxism, as well as his newest book, The Marxification of Education. Dr. Lindsay has been a featured guest on Fox News, Glenn Beck, Joe Rogan, and NPR, and he has spoken at the Oxford Union and the EU Parliament. James has been a decoder, I guess, helping us to be able to connect what's happened in the past to what's happening right now. And the first time I met James was in Miami. I went to one of his seminars. I had been listening to him a little bit, and I said, I need to meet this guy. So I went down to Miami, and I sat in the back of the room, and he talked for like 3 days straight. And I took copious notes, and then I went up to him, and I said, hey, we started this organization, and I want to work with you. I want to try to figure out how to make what you're doing palatable to the mom who is in her house folding laundry, right, or taking her kids to school, working 3 jobs, but knows that something is going on in our country and she needs to understand why. And James said, okay, let's do it. So we've spent hours on the phone. We've been able to work together in lots of different ways. And I know many of you listen and enjoy him. James is one of the kindest, most generous people I have ever met in my life. And we are incredibly proud to have him on our advisory board and to call him a friend. Dr. James Lindsay, also known as Lady Killer.
Well, thank you. Well, that was really great, so I'll just go sit down now. Good morning, war moms. But much more importantly, good morning, joyful warriors. Really? Good morning, joyful warriors. It's better. So, last night I confirmed with Tiffany. I said, Tiffany, what do you want me to talk about? And she narrowed it down nicely for me. She said, James, you can talk about anything you want. But build them up, because that's my brand. So I figured I'd talk to you about the greatest and most successful mass murderer in history. That is my brand. So you guys are under attack right now. You may not know, on the other hand, I don't know if you keep up with the social media like I do, that you trended, Moms for Liberty trended on Twitter yesterday to almost 60,000 tweets. Moms for Liberty is the national conversation right now. It's eclipsed it all. And you guys, after yesterday, we had Governor DeSantis speak, we had Nikki Haley speak, we had President Trump speak. Everything seems like it's super positive, but I know when we came in here, everybody's like, oh man, it's kind of negative, a little dark, we're under these attacks. You got this Southern poverty thing calling you names, saying that you're something, domestic, awful people. Yeah. I am too. I have a profile. I'm an extremist now. You've got this whole thing, this whole, fake news media farce trying to say that you support Nazis, which is absolutely the most preposterous thing I've ever heard in my life. And there's a reason for this, and I told Tiffany this, there's a reason for this, and you all need to know this. The reason that you are under these crazy attacks, the reason the Department of Justice is naming you as domestic extremists, terrorists, the reason that the FBI is calling some of you when you go to school board meetings, the reason that they are trying to smear you so desperately before this beautiful summit is because they know something. They know that mothers, and probably mothers alone, will do anything for their kids. And more importantly, mothers will stop a revolution if it means protecting their kids. That is what you are doing when you're here. That is what you're doing also when you're in the grind, at the school board meetings, at your monthly chapter meetings, or more often. When you're slogging through, you've got your laundry and all these things. Tiffany's telling me, I got mom's folding laundry. Dumb down your podcast. And she didn't lie, by the way. I spoke for 3 days straight. They were 4-hour sessions, back to back to back. Poor Tiffany sitting in the back, taking notes. 4 hours at a go. What you guys are slogging through is a cultural revolution. So when I said that I want to talk about the most successful mass murderer of all time, I'm talking about Mao Zedong. What is happening in America and throughout the West right now, as I told the European Union Parliament just about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, I guess, is the Western cultural revolution. Mao Zedong launched a cultural revolution in 1966 to regain power. He'd actually already screwed up. He had power in 1949. I don't know, I'm going to give you a little history. I got a little bit of time. He takes over in 1949. What's the first thing Mao Zedong does in 1950 after he secures his power? October 49, 1950, he's in power. What's the first thing he does? Anybody know? Confiscate guns. No. But that was already done. 1950, he fired every teacher in China and sent them to re-education so there would be socialist education only in China. And by 1952, every teacher in China had been re-educated. They weren't allowed back in the classrooms until after they had been re-educated. For 2 years, there was virtually no education in China because he was having all the teachers re-educated. They shut down the schools for 2 years and came back with a whole new program. Does that sound familiar? And so in 1957, 1958, Mao is kind of at the peak of his power. And that was a traditional military coup he staged in 49. He took over at the barrel of a gun. He's now the big dictator of China in 1957. He's at the top of his game. And he launches a program that if we had anti-communist education in this country, which every one of you should be agitating for in all 50 states, you would know it's called the Great Leap Forward. We have a Great Leap Backwards today called the Great Reset, which is a little ominous. He launched the Great Leap Forward saying, we're going to make China the leader in the world in productions of the things that matter. We're going to maximize steel production. We're going to maximize food production, especially the production of wheat. And we're going to mobilize our entire socialist country to do it. And it turns out that this was how communists usually do things. It was done rather poorly. He forced people to go work in the countryside. He forced farmers to melt their plows to get more steel so the numbers would look better. He forced steel workers to go work in the farms. Total catastrophe. The estimate is that 55 million people died. That is an act of mass murder unprecedented in human history. 55 million people died. So they got a little mad at him. You think, communist dictator, he's invincible. They kicked him out of power. They made him step down in 1962. The point of the Cultural Revolution in 1966 was Mao wanted his power back. So Mao launched a second revolution, not against the sitting nationalist party, the Kuomintang that he took over previously, but against the CCP. He had his main political rival he had to get rid of in the CCP. His name was Liu Shaoqi. Had to get rid of this guy. So he starts encouraging all those students he spent 16 years indoctrinating in his schools to go out and be radical, to go out and smash the four olds, the old symbols of society, of Chinese culture. Old habits, old customs, old culture, old ways of thinking. Smash them. Go into people's homes. They have old stuff, old culture. They have pictures. They have Buddhas on the wall. They have what? Take it out, burn it in the street. Somebody's espousing old ideas. Take them out, beat them up in the street. And he mobilized a generation of radicalized youth to get his power back. So for 2 years, this organization called the Rainbow Guard, wait, no, that's our time, Red Guard, terrorized China. Parents lived in fear, grandparents lived in fear, teachers lived in fear, professors lived in fear that their children, their students would turn on them, turn them in, drag them out and humiliate them in what famously became known as struggle sessions. What you went through last week, in the lead up to the summit was a struggle session. It has a name. It has a history. It's a comprehensible thing. These humiliation sessions, struggle sessions, were meant to transform China and get its power back. Eventually, the Red Guard was so powerful, they were given actually the power to be ignored by the police. If they beat up people who had wrong political opinions or destroyed their property or seized their property or anything else, police looked the other way, sometimes helped. These radicalized youth eventually grabbed Liu Shaoqi. Pause for a second and think about what they did. That is the president of the CCP, which is a communist dictatorship. And they dragged him out into the street, and they shamed him in a struggle session, and they humiliated him, and they sent him off to the countryside to die 2 months later in misery. That was the end of 1967. About a year and a half after the Red Guard was encouraged in 66 to start doing what it did. So what did Mao do to thank his revolutionary youth? And I know that our friends, our countrymen outside, they're not my friends. Our countrymen outside do not realize what's coming next for them if they win. Because if they win, they lose. Because what Mao Zedong said immediately after Liu Shaoqi was deposed was, the Red Guard has been useful, but it's too radical. It has become too far left. It's too dangerous. And he unleashed his old standby from the 40s, the People's Liberation Army, on the Red Guard, rounded them up, killed a bunch of them, sent them off to the countryside to die in starvation and misery, to work in labor camps, to be re-educated, not to be so radical. And that's where our woke countrymen are going to if they succeed. So this is a moment where I want to hearken back to Julie's invocation, where we really need to be praying for our enemies. We really need to be concerned about these people. And this is why it's so important that we're joyful warriors. It's so important that we're joyful warriors. I want to talk actually about the struggle session and what they are. You got a little history now. You're like, oh no. I want to convince you also that this is what we're going through in America. But it's so important that we keep this joyful warrior attitude, that we keep this poise, that we keep the dignity that we're showing, that we showed the staff of the hotel who have treated us like gold this entire time, despite all of this propaganda against us. It is so important to realize how ridiculous the people look outside by comparison unless we react badly. If we get back in their faces, if we accept their provocation, they have their excuse. Look, they proved it, they actually are a hate group. Look, they proved it, they actually are transphobic. Look, they proved it, they actually are racist, and it takes exactly one of you deciding to do something stupid they catch on camera, and then they have their proof, and that's it. This is the essence of the story of turning the other cheek that we read in the gospel. You slap my one cheek? Go ahead, show them. Slap the other one too. Show them how cool you are. It's not quite how it's phrased, but that's the gist. When we show up and are joyful warriors, and we show up and we remember who's watching, not just the fake news media in the back. I don't think they're here. I'm not President Trump. But I'm going to point just in case. Hi, New York Times, fake news. We got your number. I forgot my train of thought on that. That's awesome. So when they run these propaganda campaigns, though, what they're trying to do is to set up the stage to create a social condition that's just like what we had in communist China. Here's how Mao did his Cultural Revolution, aside from the identity politics part, which I'll come back to. Here's how he did it. This is going to feel awfully familiar, like a lot of the other stuff we had that's awfully familiar today. Here's what Mao did. He came out, and I'm got to be careful because the word's been used a lot in its proper context today. Oh yeah, I remember what I was saying. It was about the fake news media. We got to remember who's watching. Always remember who's watching. What he did was he came out and said, we need unity in China. It's time for unity. It is time for unity. But we're going to have unity, he said, under a new basis because the old basis isn't working for everybody. We're going to have unity on a new basis. We just want to have a China where, he didn't say this exactly, I'm riffing. We just want to have a China where everybody feels like they belong. That's the modern parlance for this. We want unity. But the problem is we can't have unity because some of you are domestic terrorists. Some of you are transphobic. Some of you are part of the rising movement of anti-LGBTQ hate, and some of us can't feel like we belong because hate has no home here. So you have to be criticized on what amount to bogus terms. You have to be struggled in that criticism for your not real racism, but fake racism. Systemic, they call it, whatever, fake. Fake news, fake racism. For your fake homophobia, for your fake transphobia. You have to be struggled for this so that everybody can feel like they belong, so that we can have an inclusive society on a new basis. Now, Mao had the luxury of being open about his socialism, so he said that new basis would be called socialist discipline. We will have freedom, he said, under socialist discipline. We will have a free society as long as everybody only does what they're told. They love the contradictions. They love the paradoxes. Accelerate the contradictions, comrades. They will make you have unity on a new basis, which we now call a sustainable and inclusive society. And if you aren't giving them the conditions where everybody, the most aggrieved, grifter, the conditions where they feel included on impossible and increasingly impossible terms, you are the problem and you need to be struggled. So if you've been to a DEI training at your workplace or your school, that's what you got put through. We just want to have an inclusive workplace where everybody feels like they belong, but we have a problem with systemic racism in this country that we're going to address. That's CRT. So everybody needs to come out and confess to their racism. Everybody needs to come out and talk about it. You got to be ready to have these courageous conversations or honest history or whatever BS. This is what they say, and we're going to get people to start confessing, and we're going to get people to start talking about it. We're going to get the tears flowing in the wrong way. We're going to bully you, and if you don't want to play along, you have white fragility, which proves that you're a racist. Or you have probably straight fragility or privilege fragility or something fragility. Male fragility. There's no male fragility. I don't know what you're talking about. Not here. Not in this house. And they struggled people into confessions to crimes they didn't commit. Does that sound like your week last week? Let's be unambiguous. There was nothing wrong with that newsletter. The context was clear to everybody who's not a manipulator. They make people confess to false crimes, and the way that they do it is by manipulating not just them, because do you really care what the New York Times says? No. Do you really care what Salon or one of these left-wing things? I saw there's an article about you in there today. I'm sure it's great. I didn't read it. Nobody reads it. No one cares what they say. What they care about is that they build up a pressure campaign that starts to affect your friends. They're applying external pressure, like right now, for example. We're in here, we're talking, we're having a good time, where everything's all dignified and fun. They're screaming at a building. We can't even hear them. They are outside yelling at a building. It's what's happening. They are creating an external pressure campaign that doesn't mean anything until it gets in here too. And not by them infiltrating, by getting inside our heads. The struggle session works when all your friends, so what happened in Mao's prisons is they would drag you in front of a judge who accused you of a crime that you didn't commit, espionage against the Chinese people, harm against the Chinese people, harming the Chinese people, some vague thing. And they would say, what did you do? Confess. And you'd have no idea what you did. And they would tell you, well, you need to confess. We can't wrap up your case till you confess. And then they'd send you back to your cell. And your cell, you weren't alone in your cell in a Maoist prison. There were 8 other people with you. And it was those people's job to tell you how much you should want to confess. This could all be wrapped up very simply if you just apologize, if you just explain why you did what you did. Oh, well, the problem is, in their words, you can't recognize your crime yet because you don't have the socialist discipline. So we're going to have to do the work. We're going to have to study the socialist discipline to understand, so you can recognize your crime and confess to it. In other words, so you can accept their terms and live on the new basis that Mao wanted to have. Unity followed by criticism to be on unity on a new basis. That's what he did. And so the pressure campaign from the outside is meant to crack you on the inside. And until you crack on the inside, they have nothing on you. It's actually kind of funny. They're yelling at a building. So what do you do with this? What do you do with this? How do you deal with a struggle session? Because you are going to go through a lot of them now. Did you see who spoke yesterday? They're not going to leave you alone. You have an SPLC extremist speaking to you right now. They're not going to leave you alone. They know you can stop a revolution. They know important people are paying attention to you. They know that you are the future of this country. And they know that you're joyful warriors, so that, just like Tiffany says, when you do this work, which is grueling and awful and humiliating and demoralizing, that you know your children are watching, so you do it with a smile on your face. And you're raising up not the future of America in you, but in your children, that they can't have. So what do you do with a struggle session? Well, there are a few things you can actually do. If we read the literature, that they were studying people that were getting kicked out of China, out of these prisons, that were put through struggle sessions for years, and it warped all their brains. They're literally called thought reform prisons or brainwashing prisons. That's actually the Chinese call. They're a little blunt if you don't know much about Chinese culture. They just call things what they are. This means wash brain. We're going to wash people's brains of the wrong ideology. And they study these people. So one of the things you can actually do, and this is, I think, the most important, the woke have a name for this. They know what's kind of going on for how to become activists in a certain sense. They call it critical distance. The people who had kind of a scientific detachment and decided to study the experience of being struggled in a prison themselves had some of the least effect to them. So if you can take a step back and stop being personalized by it, get the emotions out of it, which is hard. I've been through them. I have a podcast. You can go listen. I got vigorously struggled when they let me back on Twitter. They really didn't want me to stay there. So they struggled me. It was really rough. And so I did a podcast about it. You can listen to it. People who can step back and get out of that and study the experience as they go through it. What's happening to us? Why is it happening to us? What do they want out of us? Turns out it doesn't affect you that much. It becomes a science experiment. That's one thing. The other thing, though, the more important thing is the joyful warrior message. Or there's more than one other thing. I'm going to tell you some more ideas. But the joyful warrior message is that you keep doing what you're doing. You don't stop for their bogus accusations. You address them and you get back to work. You say, no, this is ridiculous. I've got stuff to do. And you get back to work and you prove it out by winning. You prove it out by not rising to the provocation, but you rise to the occasion instead. That is actually what you do. You know what you can tell it's what they'll do, because if you try to do this here on social media, they're struggling you. They know they're struggling you. They know they're emotionally manipulating you, and you're just doing your normal stuff. And they'll say, oh, Tiffany's trying to tweet through it. They're just going to tweet through it. That's the slang term for this. They're going to tweet through it. What that means is you are not succumbing to their provocation to wrap you up in emotional knots where they can control you. So you keep doing your work. And what happened? This is the fastest case ever. They start struggling you on like Tuesday. By like Thursday, they come out bragging because the summit's coming. They got to do something. They're like, we are the Youth Communist League, and we're going to have a dance party to protest. A communist dance party. It says it like on the thing. It says, we are the Youth Communist League. And so you think, well, maybe the flyer's fake. And then the Youth Communist League official Twitter account is like, no, this is us. So I'm riding the Uber on my way here, and I'm talking to this guy, and he's just like, well, I'm taking a lot of people to this hotel. What's going on? And I was like, well, it's Moms for Liberty. And he was like, well, I don't know what that is, but if it's for liberty, I like that. That's simple. And then he's like, what is it? I was like, well, it's this big conference. I'm telling him a little bit about it. And I was like, but it's really controversial. I hope there's no protesters when we get there. It's kind of late. Hopefully there's no protesters. There's going to be protests. And he's like, well, who's protesting? I was like, well, the Youth Communist League. He said, what? The communists? And I was like, yeah. He said, I didn't know they still existed. And now we have an ally. He had no idea. The communists came out and confessed. So this is why you just keep doing your work. The truth comes out. The truth always comes out as long as there are people who are willing to speak it. And they have egg on their faces. They're embarrassing Philadelphia, which is sad. I found out this is a really cool city with awesome food. They're out, yes you are. They're embarrassing their city, and it's getting to look worse and worse and worse and worse, and the contrast is amazing. They look like fools. You're a bunch of cool moms. Guy last night, we're down enjoying some libations at the hotel last night, and this gentleman comes over. He's here for a wedding, and he says, are you guys with that Moms for Liberty? And we're like, yeah. And he's like, you all are such beautiful mothers fighting for your kids. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Their messages don't win over time. They can get a small percentage of the population for a little while, and it falls apart the more you prove it out. So this is the main thing that you do to resist a struggle session. You just keep going. You address the claims, you don't dwell on the claims, and you move forward. And it will drag you down if you don't. So this is what I really want to talk about. You have to understand that their primary objective is to make you quit. Their primary objective is to make you quit. And why? Because what I just told you, the truth will come out as long as somebody's willing to speak it. The second they can get people to stop speaking the truth, you end up with a cultural revolution like in China, or you end up with 69 years of state-sponsored terrorism in Soviet Union. This is what you end up with when people can no longer speak the truth, but the truth eventually comes out as long as people are willing to speak it. So they have to try to silence you. They have to try to make you quit. This is called demoralization. It has a name. They want to demoralize you. They want you to make you feel like what you're doing doesn't have an impact. So what you have to do is start to learn to recognize unconventional winning. We're in unconventional war. You have to recognize unconventional winning. You have unconventional winning happening right now. There's been 0 incidents because of moms at this hotel while they're acting the fool. That's unconventional winning. I mentioned that Mao launched his unity formula, unity, criticism, unity. What happened when Joe Biden got elected? What did he say we were going to have nationally now that he's in charge? Unity. You ever hear him talk about that anymore? Why? Because we said, on whose terms? We asked the question, on whose terms? We pointed out the contradiction. You want unity on a new basis, and we're not having that. If we're going to have unity, we're going to have unity as Americans. We're not going to have unity on your contrived terms. So they just quietly stopped saying it. That's unconventional winning. That's unconventional winning. I can point to example after example. Who owns the term woke now? We do. We do. We took their word, woke. How they doing with that word pride now? It's pride, everybody's happy through the 90s, everybody's happy through the early 2000s, and now it's like pride cometh before the fall. Pride looks an awful lot like shame, and Americans are waking up to it very quickly. Why? Because people have been willing to stand up and speak the truth. This is what you have to do. This is all you have to do is you keep your smiles on your faces as best you can. You got kids, I know. You show them every day that you're a joyful warrior. You show the public that you're a joyful warrior. You don't rise to provocations. You respond clearly. You tell the truth. You respond honestly. I'm writing a book right now about how to stand up to this stuff, the principles. And one of the things that I actually want to say, I know that some people here are going to get a little worked up about this, is love the truth with all your heart and all your mind. And love your neighbor like you love yourself. That's how you do this. That's how you do this. You tell the truth, you tell the truth, you tell the truth, you tell the truth again and again. Let me tell you a story. You guys are all aware now that all this pride, corporate pride, is funded or fueled by this thing called a corporate equality index now. You've probably heard this. Everybody's been talking about it. Maybe you're under a rock. Maybe you've missed the memo because you got kids, you're busy, you're folding laundry. There's this thing called the Corporate Equality Index the Human Rights Campaign put out that forces corporations to do this by a number of mechanisms we're not going to get into today. There's a score that they have to get. That's why they're doing a lot of what they're doing. They have to get a number. Well, I found out about the Corporate Equality Index last September, and I started talking about the Corporate Equality Index. I said, you guys, you got to pay attention to the Corporate Equality Index. And I'm like getting all demoralized. I'm like, nobody listens to James. Nobody listens to James. Corporate Equality Index, I'm talking about it. I go to Heritage in January. I'm like, guys, we should talk your gender thing. We should talk about the Corporate Equality Index. And they're like, yeah, okay, James. I'm like, nobody listens to James. Nobody listens to James. I'm over here muttering like that guy in that house elf in Harry Potter. All right, you guys, nobody listens to James. And then Dylan Mulvaney goes on a beer can, and I do a thread, and I'm like, guess what? That's because of the Corporate Equality Index. And now everybody's talking about it. This is how this works. You talk about it, you talk about it, you talk about it, you talk about it, you talk about it. It's like putting dust in the air, and then suddenly something happens and a sunbeam comes through and everybody can see it. That's how it works. And if you get tired and miserable and quit, that never happens. So that's what they have to do to you. So y'all are 2.5 years old. That means that you're hitting that stride of what they call in the literature activist fatigue. You want to see results, you want to see results, you want to see results, but you're not getting the results as fast as you thought they were going to come, and it gets exhausting. And all I can tell you is that the most important principle is that you must not give them what they want. They want you to quit. They want you to get mad. They want you to flip out. They want you to be a PR nightmare for yourselves. Don't worry about making mistakes. Worry about jumping into the hole that they're digging for you. If you just keep telling the truth and you don't give up, we are going to transform this country. We're going to do it fast, because the last thing I'll say is the way these things go, the question before the court, if you will, is, can a cultural revolution be stopped? The answer is, we don't know, but I can tell you right now, it will not be stopped by people who quit. It will not be stopped by people who give up. And it will not be stopped by people who lose control of themselves and their dignity. That said, I stand before, with the privilege yet again, thank you, Tiffany and Tina, I stand before, I think, the answer, the positive answer to that question. Can a cultural revolution be stopped? Yes, it can, because the reason they hate you. Mothers will stop a revolution if that's what it takes to protect their children. Thank you.
So now we're going to wrap up breakfast, and we're going to have the breakout sessions, and you see them right there. We have Protecting Kids in room 1, More Than Victims in room 2, and Know Your Numbers in room 3. And then we'll have Cracking the SEL Code, Lessons from Washington's Leadership, and Making It Rain. Go enjoy and learn. Thank you, James Lindsay.